Chapter 17, The Will to Power. The game starts with the floating Zohar emulator left behind in space after Ariadne disappeared. Apparently, it was the only thing left behind after the planet disappeared. A galaxy military ship, the Woglinde, is seen nearby ready to retrieve the object. For this purpose, some manned vehicles and a single researcher in a suit were deployed. The vehicles grabbed the Zohar with their mechanical claws in order to stop it from rotating, but for some reason the researcher decided he just had to just give it the emulator a little touch. And when he did, he disappeared. That's the last we see of that guy. Next, more of the same vehicles come in and place protective rings around the Zohar in order to safely place it inside the ship. Even though the Woglinde's mission was to investigate the disappearance of Ariadne, as soon as they retrieve the emulator, the fleet retreats. 10 days later, we see Shion Uzuki along with Alan Ridgely and the rest of her team preparing for a UMN dive into the Encephalon they created to test Cosmos. Shion and her team were dispatched onto the Woglinde in order to give the military support during their mission to investigate the disappearance of Ariadne. By the way, yes, I did say 10 days later. I know the way the intro cutscene was laid out makes it seem like the retrieval of the emulator and Shion's test were happening at the same time, but there is one line that proves the retrieval actually happened days before.
Ever since we picked up that object 10 days ago, everyone's been a bit jumpy, and we still...
Anyways, not important. After some technobabble during the preparation to start the Encephalon dive, Shion enters her password, "Ye shall be as gods," and dives into the Encephalon along with Cosmos. The world that created in the Encephalon is based on an abandoned, dilapidated building in the early 2000s, so during our time. Shion asks Cosmos to introduce herself.
I am an anti-Gnosis humanoid fighting system, serial number 0000000001, development name KPX, abbreviated name Cosmos. As I am currently configured for simulated battle, my output is limited to 22% of its normal capacity.
When Shion tells her that she just has basic tests for her that day, and that she will have to return to stasis after them, she asks her if she feels sad about this. But Cosmos, in her robotic ways, tells her,
"A predetermined set of emotions has been hard-coded into my emotion module to better facilitate interactions with humans. In order to better facilitate a relationship with you, I will emit an expression such as sadness only when that response is deemed necessary. However, the emotion module of my program has determined that this is not necessary at this time."
This shows just how robotic Cosmos is, in which greatly differentiates her from our Realian. This attitude, however, will begin to worry Shion, as Cosmos was encoded with certain emotions in order to communicate with humans better. They just never seem to show up. Shion also expresses her mixed feelings about what they're doing. She's sad that the next time they will ever boot her up will probably be a time of great bloodshed, as Cosmos is a weapon. However, Shion is happy that she's awake now and wishes she could be awake more often. This is one of the first signs we see of Shion becoming very attached to Cosmos. She no longer sees her as her only link to Kevin, but Shion has begun seeing Cosmos almost as her daughter. Also, this isn't important, but it's kind of funny. When Shion asks Cosmos if she understands her emotions about activating her, Cosmos, in a long-winded robotic way, pretty much tells her she's being dumb.
The algorithms I have been programmed with do not support the comprehension of illogical human thought.
Anyways, Alan then begins the test by placing enemy units in Encephalon for Cosmos to fight, but Shion insists that they skip to level 300 processes and just start from 400. Whatever that means. She's skipping levels. Alan, worried about this decision, references a time when they tried this and Shion almost got stuck in the Encephalon. However, Shion, excited to see what Cosmos can do, convinces him. Anyways, they go through the simulation with varying ease depending on the player playing the game, obviously. After some time, Shion's team replaces the enemy units from mechs and soldiers to Gnosis, in order to test Cosmos' abilities against Gnosis. Cosmos chews through them too and gets to the end of the simulation where she must fight one last Gnosis. But when this Gnosis appears, Cosmos seems to malfunction for some reason. A rapidly growing network starts being created in the Cosmos mainframe. Honestly, I don't think this is ever touched upon again. And if it is, feel free to correct me, but no matter how much I try, I can't really connect it with anything else I know about Cosmos. It could be the consciousness of Mary awakening within her, as we will see it tends to awaken during extreme cases of danger, but I'm not entirely sure, especially because this isn't an especially dangerous situation. Anyways, it doesn't really matter much. Despite the risk, Shion, of course, decides to continue with the tests. Cosmos manages to defeat the Gnosis, and Shion, feeling confident, decides to shift the Gnosis target into real mode, meaning to change it into what a real Gnosis would actually be like, meaning untouchable. She does this in order to test Cosmos' Hilbert effect generator. Alan disapproves of this because this is not a part of protocol for this program, but Shion can do whatever she wants as chief. And she does. Cosmos activates the Hilbert effect, and immediately the encephalon begins to collapse. Alan warns Shion and tells her to get out, but Shion refuses to leave as she wants to continue gathering data. Shion's team attempts to forcefully pull her out of the encephalon, but Shion overrides their commands, so Alan goes in himself to pull her out. As the Gnosis is affected by the Hilbert waves, it begins glowing yellow, and then a little girl appears under it. It's Nephilim. Yep, remember her from the second video? The first person to be the test subject of a Zohar link experiment? Grimar Verum's daughter? The girl who becomes a being in the imaginary number domain but did not become a Gnosis? Yeah, she's finally going to start playing a role. Shion notices her and finds her appearance strange, of course. But before they can interact, Alan appears and pulls her out of the encephalon. Once outside of the encephalon, Alan expresses his concern, telling Shion how he felt like he was going to have a heart attack. But you know, at least the data will be good. Her mind wanders back to Nephilim, but when Alan asks her if anything is wrong, Shion says her catchphrase.
Oh, it's nothing. Well,
seriously, she constantly says this in every episode. I might do a montage on it, to be honest. Anyways, after this, the ship gets an announcement that they are about to gate out. What this means is that they're about to leave the UMN column in order to return to the real number domain. You see, when you use the UMN to travel at faster than light speed, you can't just pop in and out anywhere. You have to use UMN columns that have been established. When you go through these columns, you leave normal space and enter hyperspace. Travel isn't instantaneous, but it is faster than light. For my Minecraft players out there, think of hyperspace as the Nether. When you teleport into the Nether, if you travel 10 blocks forward, then when you travel back to the normal world, you've actually traveled 80 blocks away. Yes, I like Minecraft. Anyways, because they have to use specified gates in order to travel through the UMN, sometimes they have to gate out somewhere in normal space, only to go to the next column where they can gate back in. Almost like when you ride in an airplane to another airport in order to take another airplane to your actual destination. These gates are also why one can only use the UMN to travel to areas of space that have been civilized. Continuing with the story, a navigator in the Woglinde states that the next gate jump isn't for another 7 hours, which brings a sense of relief to both the captain of the ship, Captain Moriyama, and the commander, Andrew Cherenkov. Oh yeah, did I forget to mention that Andrew Cherenkov is in the ship? He's been able to keep his loyalty to Utic a secret, and because he was wearing a mask during his raid on the Vector Lab, nobody recognizes him as a Utic agent. Here, Cherenkov, the captain, and some other crew members of the Woglinde begin to talk about the events since they recovered the emulator. It seems nobody's really sure of what it is, save Cherenkov of course, but he doesn't share this information. However, one of the staff members mentioned that it seems like their whole mission has changed since they recovered the object. The captain mentions that they are after the object too. Who they are, I'm not sure. Could be the Gnosis or it could be Utic. The captain mentions that their orders included the fact that if there were any salvageable objects in the area, that their retrieval was top priority. This implies that the higher-ups in the Galaxy Federation expected to find the Zohar emulator here, as Cherenkov says, top priority means over our very lives. And we all know how zest with the Zohar and its emulators everyone is. They begin to talk about Cosmos and how the Vector team is supposed to have the A7 test result ready today. And it seems that nobody knows much about Cosmos. In fact, they don't even call it Cosmos. They tend to just say things like that weapon or the trump card or simply the battle android. It is, after all, a classified project. Some of the crew even believe that the project is just a way of Vector to show off. If only they knew. Later, Shion is ordered by a lieutenant to bring Cosmos' test data to the bridge, and Shion leaves to give the data to the captain. Shion, however, forgets the data in the research room. I would criticize her if it wasn't for the fact that I've done very similar things. Many times. Alan notices this and decides to catch up with Shion to give her the data. And the rest of the staff jokingly say that this is his perfect moment to ask her out as they'll be alone. Alan just brushes their comments aside and angrily leaves to give Shion the data. However, it's not like he doesn't want to, but he feels like he can't as she's still hung up on Kevin. Yes, Alan is madly in love with Shion. On the way to the Boglinde Bridge, Shion encounters a man, Vanderkamp, abusing his soldiers in order to straighten them out, constantly calling them slackers. She thinks back to a time when her and Kevin were working on Cosmos in the lab on the planet Carioca, the same planet that got raided by Utic. Then, Shion brings her attention to the emulator when suddenly it's almost like time stops, except for her. In front of the emulator, she sees Nephilim, and then she seems to be teleported to some graveyard that she had never seen before, with the original Zohar and Nephilim in front of her. This graveyard is actually on Earth, around the same place that Mary was buried. Nephilim seems to be trying to tell Shion something, but she can't hear her. Then she turns around and just walks into the Zohar. Shion walks towards the Zohar and reaches out to it. When she touches it, it begins to ripple as if it was made out of water, and then suddenly, she returns to reality as someone screams at her to look out as one of the protection rings around the emulator is about to hit her. Vanderkamp orders her to get out of the area as he has already lost 4 men who got curious and touched the emulator. On the way to the bridge, Alan manages to catch up with Shion and gives her the test data she forgot. As they continue talking on the way to the bridge, Shion gets a message from Vector's 3rd Division, which is in charge of Realian maintenance, to ask her for some help with the Realians, and she runs off. Alan then realizes that he forgot to ask her out after work. When she gets to the Realian facility, she meets Lieutenant Caspes? I'm not sure how to say that, but we're gonna call him Lieutenant Caspes. He explains the problems he's having. They're honestly not very important, and Shion manages to do some nerd magic in order to fix them up. When she finishes, Lieutenant Caspes mentions how impressive it is that she can provide Realian psych support while also developing Cosmos, and Shion tells him that she's always wanted to work in the 3rd Division and is thinking of transferring to 3rd Division after finishing work on Cosmos. Remember, this is where she originally applied until Kevin pulled strings to have her assigned to 1st Division. As she stands over a Realian, saying that she wants to learn everything there is to learn about them, Virgil, who is now a lieutenant, walks in and asks her what learning about them is going to do for her. Yeah, he's here too, now grumpier than ever. He goes on to say a lot of stuff which isn't really important except to show just how disgusted he is by Realians and how much he hates them. Shion is pretty much completely opposed to him, as she even calls them people. She believes they are as much people as real humans and deserve the same rights and respect. Virgil tells her to get off her soapbox, as her company treats them the same way he sees them, as equipment and merchandise. When Shion refutes these claims, he asks her why they categorize them as weapons-grade Realians. He is even aware of Vector's secret. That secret being that apparently they have an emergency override code in order to control them manually. Shion has nothing to say about this because he's got a point. Virgil is then cut off by Lieutenant Caspes, but Realian steps in to tell Virgil that he is right in that they are manufactured and raised as merchandise, but he takes great pride in his job. Pride that was not programmed unto him, but that he feels on his own free will. Lewis seems to be hit by some kind of pain, probably because of his DME addiction, and as he walks away, he tells the Realian to enjoy his free will because one day he will realize the truth. Lieutenant Caspes apologizes to Shion for Virgil. He says that he has known Virgil since military school and Virgil wasn't always like this, but something in militia changed him. After all this, Shion finally remembered what she was doing to begin with, and that she's being expected at the bridge, so she rushes out of the lab and heads towards the bridge. When she gets there, she hands over the data to Commander Cherenkov. He says he understands the specs and asks her about the actual field data, to which Shion can only say that it's not quite ready. When Cherenkov notices that Shion is making excuses as to why they don't have field data yet, he begins getting increasingly angry with her, as he tells her that, essentially, they're not well equipped for a Gnosis attack, and they need Cosmos to be operational. But even after making his point, he continues to berate her, to the point where Captain Moriyama has to cut him off. Then Cherenkov gets a call, which forces him to leave the bridge, and the captain tells Shion that what's important is how reliable Cosmos is once she's operational, telling her to take her time. He gives her the rest of the day off, and Shion heads to her living quarters. We then see Cherenkov talking to the person who was calling him, that being Margulis. He berates Cherenkov for how clumsily their operation to take the emulator went, as they lost multiple people. But he's not worried about the people they lost. Apparently, the act of people touching the emulator and disappearing emits some kind of signal wave which attracts Gnosis. At least that's what I got off of this. Utek's original plan was to attack the Woglinde once they took the emulator and they were vulnerable. But because of this impending Gnosis attack that they're sure is bound to happen, Utek has to move their plans up 2 phases. Margulis tells Cherenkov that based on UMN activity that the radar have picked up, the Gnosis will be at their location in 5 hours and 22 minutes. Utek has dispatched reinforcements, but it's not sure they will arrive before the Gnosis. All Margulis tells Cherenkov is to keep the emulator safe, whatever the cost, even if he has to send it to hyperspace on its own. His main priority is to make sure the Galaxy Federation doesn't get its hands on it. Back to Shion, we see her in her room talking to her brother, Jin, by, I was going to call it phone, but I'm sure that's not what it is. I just don't know what to call this advanced UMN communication technology. UMN Skype? Sure, UMN Skype. Anyways, it seems Jin is trying once again to get Shion to visit her parents' memorial with him, but she brushes it off as an obscure ancient ritual. She then shifts the focus on him, talking about his hobby of collecting ancient books. All books are ancient in this time period, so she pretty much means collecting books in general. She believes this to be a dumb hobby. After Jin makes her promise to try to make it home at some point in the year, Shion tells him that she will try to when she gets some time off, and she hangs up on him before going to bed. Chapter 18: Attack on the Woglinde. While she sleeps, she dreams of that foggy graveyard on Earth again. There, she once again sees Nephilim, but also, through the fog, she can see a human figure walking towards her. She doesn't know who it is, but we do. It's Chaos. Apparently, he's keeping his eye on her too. We then see Nephilim looking over Shion in the real world as she sleeps. Not aware of the impending Gnosis attack, the ship's crew continue their job as usual, but there is someone that can sense the Gnosis, Cosmos. We see Alan walk into the Cosmos lab. Apparently he took some heat off of Shion and got yelled at by Cherenkov for not having Cosmos ready yet. Nobody knows why Cherenkov seems to be so on edge lately, because nobody else knows that they're about to get ambushed by Gnosis. Then, we're shown the pod that Cosmos sleeps in glowing brighter. Back on the bridge, a navigator states that they're 19 minutes away from the next UMN column. Then they get a warning from within the ship. After running a search, they find out what's causing it. It's Cosmos. We see the Vector staff in the Cosmos lab freaking out as Cosmos seems to be activating herself. Then Shion is woken up by an alarm notifying her of this too. It seems Cosmos will be activated in 10 minutes. Knowing this, and worried about what happened last time Cosmos activated, Shion hurries through her lab as she can't get a call through to Alan. On her way to the lab, another alarm begins to go off. This one is activated by an external source. All navigators agree that what they are observing is a giant mass gating out of the UMN, and it's defying the laws of physics. It's the Gnosis. The Woglinde deploy all the weapons and eggs, but without the observational unit realities, they prove to be little to no use. Inside the ship, Virgil gets inside an eggs and deploys his team of soldiers and realians to intersect the Gnosis that made it into the ship. Virgil decides to use realians almost as shields, putting them in the front line. We can, for the very first time, really see why Gnosis are such a scary threat. Literally, nothing touches them. They're ghosts, essentially. But they can choose how and when to interact with us and the physical world as they wish. For example, by phasing through the ceiling, but crushing a human right underneath them. Or by grabbing a human by the head and lifting them up as they panic and slowly turn into salt. As the Cosmos development team try to reach Shion using an emergency line, we see that she forgot her phone in the lab. This would be me, to be honest. Suddenly the lights in the lab go out and Cosmos' pod begins to open on its own. It is about at this time that the scientists who know what happened 2 years ago shit their pants. Cosmos slowly begins getting out of the pod as everyone around her backs up, shaking in fear. She uses her radar to scan the ship looking for something. No, not Gnosis, but for Shion. She specifically wants to search for and protect Shion. Once she finds her, she starts making her way to her. Back with Virgil, we see him and his team preparing an ambush for the Gnosis, and as they see a blip on the radar turning to where they're at, they almost murder Shion, as they didn't even bother making sure that the blip on the radar was a Gnosis. Seriously though, if none of those bullets hit Shion, the ship is screwed either way. They're worse than stormtroopers. Anyway, Shion and Virgil get in an argument as she calls her an idiot for running around during a DEFCON 1 alert.
Gnosis!
Look, I've got my own problems to deal with. Here I am getting attacked by the Gnosis. I'm getting lost at every turn and don't give me a hard time right now.
While they argue, one of the men in an eggs notices the actual Gnosis coming, and they get into position, but it's too late for one of them as the Gnosis grabs him through a wall and attacks with more Gnosis coming in after it. Shion is saved by one of the Realians who tells her how to get to the escape pod. Worried about his safety, and her own, she asks him to go with her, but he stays behind to fight the Gnosis after one of the Gnosis show off that they apparently have a new ability. They can merge with mechs somehow. Don't ask me to explain this, I don't freaking know either. Back to the bridge, we see more and more of the ship being destroyed as 70% of the eggs are destroyed. The captain notices that Cherenkov is missing after someone tells him that the logic drive is down and that they've lost control of the ship. The Gnosis dives straight for the bridge and we see an explosion, implying that the captain and the rest of his crew are now dead. Meanwhile, Cherenkov is seen running towards the emulator and meeting with Vanderkam and some other men. One of the soldiers tells him that using the terminal close to the emulator, he has managed to take control of the logic drive of the ship, allowing Cherenkov to control the ship from there. So yes, Vanderkam and these men are also UTIC agents, working with Cherenkov. His plan is to purge this sector of the ship and send it into hyperspace in order to keep the emulator out of Federation hands, as Margulis suggested. But Vanderkam notes that going into hyperspace unprotected is suicide. But Cherenkov is undeterred as he sees his loyalty to Margulis as his new purpose in life now, and he is willing to die for it. As Cherenkov prepares to use the console, Vanderkam and the rest of his men salute him before getting on the escape pod. Back with Shion, who has still not moved. Virgil and the rest of the soldiers and the Realians continue to fight back the Gnosis. However, one of the Gnosis sets off a fuel air explosion attack, which disables the Realians and kills the remaining soldiers, save Virgil. The Gnosis, of course, are unscathed. Seeing how futile fighting them by normal means is, Virgil takes a device from Shion. Honestly, I forgot what this device is called. You use it in the game to access the UMN, and it seems to have multiple uses because you can also make calls with it with that UMN Skype thingy. Anyways, using this device, Virgil triggers the emergency override code to manually control the Realians. He explains that since he has returned from Miltia, he has taken apart many Realians in order to consume their natural tissue. So, Yeah, that theory I had with the DME addiction symptoms may be because of Febronia's organs? I guess that's disproven here. He actually just eats Realians. Cool. Although apparently, in the Xenosaga 3 Perfect works, there's a picture of Virgil where it says that straight up he got the DME addiction from Febronia's organ transplant. So maybe it was a retcon, which I wouldn't doubt it, because a lot of the stuff in Xenosaga 1 seems to get retconned or just forgotten about. Or maybe it's that he's trying to convince himself so much that he hates Realian that he's made up his own story about how he got his DME addiction, and now that's kind of what he tells other people. Because of this dismantling of Realians, he found out about the manual control function. The secret, he said, he knew about Vector and the Realians. Using the emergency override code, he forces the Realians to crawl towards and hold off the Gnosis. Shion, who holds much empathy for them as she sees them as humans, demands that he stops, saying that this is a violation of their rights. But Virgil reminds her that those rights are only offered to them during peacetime. Apparently, the Milton Charter states that every weapons-grade Realian is to be outfitted with a remotely accessible behavioral limit and self-destruct system in case of emergencies, and use of these functions is to be determined by the senior officer in charge of the situation. In this situation, that would be Virgil. So he plans to force the Realians to hold the Gnosis, but not just that. He will then force them to self-destruct. When Shion tells him that he has no right to play God with their lives, Virgil asks her why she hasn't disabled the function herself if she cares so much. Again, Shion doesn't have much to say except that it's company protocol, proving his point. That as much as she likes to deny it, she sees Realians the same way he does. He's just willing to accept it. Finally, after saying that humans are the ones who give Realians purpose in their lives, Virgil says he will give them a meaning to their pitiful existence and sets off their self-destruct mechanism. With this, the Realians all die. The bridge under them is destroyed and the Gnosis fall down with them. But they're still not dead. How have they still not figured out that nothing can touch a Gnosis? After some more fighting, Lewis is defeated by a Gnosis and he is forced out of his eggs. Shion is left without protection and a Gnosis grabs a hold of her. Just like everyone else, she begins to slowly turn into a pile of salt. As her life passes before her eyes, she begins to accept her fate, her death. Before she dies, she sees Nephilim under the Gnosis again. Shion tries to tell her to move and that she's not safe, but the words won't come out of her mouth. As she realizes that it's no use, she prepares to die when suddenly something catches the Gnosis' attention. A small growing red dot on the wall. Cosmos finally catches up with Shion, and Alan follows behind her to help Shion to her feet. Cosmos then starts laying this smackdown on the Gnosis, a smackdown which, as cool as it looks, still does absolutely nothing because even with Cosmos, a Gnosis can't be touched. But it's okay, because that's why she was built. As the Gnosis approaches her, Cosmos uses the Hilbert effect system, pulling all the Gnosis inside and outside the ship to the real number domain, allowing them to be attacked and disabling them from phasing through walls and other solid objects. After slicing a Gnosis open with her blade, Cosmos approaches Shion and uses my favorite weapon in her arsenal. Look, it may not be the most powerful weapon in the game, but it's freaking awesome. These things are basically 3 Gatling guns in one, and she's using 2 of them like it's nothing. Okay, anyways, I'm done fanboying. After this, Cosmos points Shion to the hangar where the escape pods are, but also where the emulator is, as her assigned duties are to protect Vector and personnel, and to verify and preserve the integrity of the emulator. Orders that Shion did not give her, but Wilhelm did, as the CEO of Vector. However, nobody knows who the orders are coming from except Cosmos. As Shion and Alan head out of the room, Cosmos shatters the windows in the room in order to eject all the Gnosis in the room. Luckily, she has some kind of floor-sticking technology keeping her from getting sucked out too. No, really, that's not a joke. She uses that in other scenarios too. When they get to the hangar, we see Cherenkov still struggling to do what he's going to do. I don't know why purging the sector and sending it into hyperspace is taking him so long. It seems like something you would just need a few commands for. Meanwhile, Alan and Virgil fight off some now solid Gnosis using some rifles, and Shion runs off by herself into the hangar where she meets Cherenkov, which seems to catch him by surprise. After the Gnosis pursuing them are defeated, Cosmos walks into the hangar and Cherenkov takes notice of her, seeming afraid as he still remembers the events that happened last time when she awoke, which almost killed him. More Gnosis attack the hangar, but Louis' crazy ass, Alan, and Cosmos fight them back. Shion decides to help by grabbing a rifle, but soon after, Gnosis drops behind her and she's frozen with fear. Virgil notices this and tries to kill it, but it's taking too long. And when Cosmos notices what's happening, she tries to shoot the Gnosis. However, Virgil was kind of in the way, so she shoots right through him. As he dies, the last thing he thinks of is Fabronia as he says her name out loud. Cosmos continues as if nothing had happened, telling Shion to hurry into the escape pod. But Shion, worried about what she's created, asks Cosmos if she even realizes what she's just done. But Cosmos coldly tells her that her duties were to protect the Vector employees, not military personnel. When Shion tells her that this doesn't give her a right to kill someone, Cosmos explains her logic.
At that time, Lieutenant Virgil was in my direct line of fire. Any changes in my firing position to avoid Lieutenant Virgil while protecting you would have resulted in a 30% depreciation in my offensive capabilities. On the other hand, with the Lieutenant's death, there would only be a 0.2% drop in efficacy. I simply chose the option with the highest probability to keep you alive. Furthermore, the escape pod has a maximum capacity of 2 occupants. I believe it is obvious who gets priority.
How can you even say that? Have you no conscience?
Shion, you forget I am not human. I am merely a weapon. You, of all people, should be well aware of that fact.
After Cosmos tells her that the best way to mourn him is to leave in the escape pod in order to not render his death meaningless, Alan helps Shion to her feet and they make their way to the second floor of the hangar. They're attacked by a Gnosis once again, but they manage to fight them off. However, the Gnosis manage to get out the Woglinde with the Zohar emulator, as they're attracted to the emulators just like they're attracted to the original Zohar. The Woglinde is destroyed, but Shion and Alan make it safely into the escape pod, and Andrew clings to dear life to said escape pod with his spacesuit on. Cosmos, being an android, is not affected by the vacuum of space. After the emulator is transported to a giant Gnosis, the Gnosis retreat. I know this all goes against the fact that Gnosis don't tend to cooperate, but remember this was the first game. A lot of ideas and concepts change between Xenosaga 1 and 3. Cosmos calls the pod she was sleeping in, which she can apparently also use as a form of transportation. And she begins talking to the people who gave her orders, telling them that the target in the Woglinde was not the real Zohar and was instead an emulator. She then tells them she will put a tracking device in the Gnosis that took the emulator, and that once she retrieves the emulator, she will return to Second Miltia. She puts a tracking device on the giant Gnosis, and it's honestly something that never amounts to anything. She then begins searching for any nearby ships she can board. The ship she finds is called the Elsa, a ship we will become very well acquainted with.